Welcome to You Can Be Healed with Connie, episode 12. Learn to set your boundaries. We teach people how to treat us. Setting personal boundary is very important. Without boundaries, you will end up feeling burnt out and lost. When you don't set any boundaries for yourself, you allow others to take anything they want from you. A boundary is a dividing line that you put between you and others. The purpose of setting a healthy personal boundary is to protect yourself, your mental health, and your emotional well-being so that others don't take advantage of us or are allowed to hurt us. It is a way for us to practice self-worth and self-respect. In this episode, I will share with you how to set your healthy boundaries. When you are saying yes to others, make sure you are not saying no to yourself. Personal boundaries are very important because they set the basic guidelines of how you want to be treated. We are the one who teaches people how to treat us, and if you are not being treated properly, it's because you allow them to treat you that way. That's why setting healthy boundaries is extremely important, and it can ensure that all our relationships can be mutually respectful and caring. Let me give you a very simple example here. I want you to imagine what our world will be without boundaries. There are laws, rules, regulations in every country in the world we are living. Those are boundaries set by the government restricting people from harming each other, to protect the citizens and to keep the society safe. We have rules and laws about everything we do, from what time we have to go to work to what shall not kill or harm any human being. Boundaries are there to make people feel safe and to know what is acceptable behavior and what cannot be accepted. What if the government suddenly decided to take away all of the laws and rules we had? Then our life would be unbearable. There could be crimes taking places all of the time. Now, can you relate that to personal boundaries? Without boundaries, we lose self-respect as we go against our values in order to please others, and we keep giving of ourselves without bottom line. In that case, we literally allow people to take advantage of us and to treat us the way they want. And sometimes it's really not others' fault because they didn't know how we feel and they think it's fine to do that. So why people feel so hard to set boundaries? Because at some point in our lives, we were taught to put other people's needs and feelings before our own. And if we don't do so, we will be called selfish and will feel guilty. I want you to know that setting boundaries isn't selfish, it's self-care and it's necessary. The guilt we feel is self-imposed based on the fear and other people's opinions. For example, you might feel if you don't help your friends, you may not be liked or they may abandon you. That's the ego trying to keep you from feeling bad in the future. But the reality is that it's not true. If someone doesn't like you for not helping them, then I will not call them our friends. On the other hand, boundaries are not meant to punish others. They are for our personal well-being and protection. We are not trying to be rude or mean to others, but instead, we are learning to communicate with them on what we want and how we want to be treated. Sometimes, people may not intentionally try to make us feel uncomfortable or hurt us, but they're simply not aware of their action, as we never tell them how we feel and how we want to be treated. For example, in my early life, I used to act like a consultant to my friends. Whenever they have any problems, especially relationship problems, they will always come to me as I can give them some constructive advices. And for many years, they would call me whenever they had argument with their partners. Sometimes they would call me and crying on the phone in the middle of the night, and I would answer their call and comfort them for hours and hours. Then I felt so tired the next day, and I've been doing that for years. I didn't have boundaries for myself until one day I felt so burnt out. Then I learned to set my boundaries, and I stopped answering their calls after midnight. I also limited my hours spending with them. For example, I used to spend 5 to 6 hours or more with them just to listen to their problems and complaints. Then I learned to limit my time to 2 to 3 hours or even less. How many of you can relate to this or have the same experiences? Please feel free to comment or contact me to let me know. I would love to hear your story. And you will know when your boundaries have been violated by the way you feel. If you have feelings of anxiety, confusion, impatience, anger, or feeling drained around that person, that can all be signs that your boundaries have been violated. That is the time to have self-reflection and set the right boundaries for yourself. Setting boundaries may feel uncomfortable at first. If you are new and just start learning to set your boundaries, you may feel a bit uncomfortable, and you can feel like you are distancing yourself from your friends. But you should really considering yourself first. That is self-love. Ask yourself how many times you ended up in a situation in which you are unhappy or feeling exhausted because you always try to fulfill others' needs first. Have you ever asked yourself, what do you really want and what makes you happy? When you look back, you will realize you didn't have the self-respect to listen to your heart and communicate what you need. As much as you think you can help everyone, you are not responsible for anyone else's happiness. And it's no one's responsibility to make you happy too. No one is responsible for the way your current life situation is, other than yourself. You are responsible for your own happiness. We don't want to feel mistreated by others. Furthermore, we don't want to give up our power to others for our happiness. So how to set boundaries? Our boundaries are shaped by the way we grow up, such as our culture, our religion, our life experiences, our personalities, our family background, etc. It can be very personal. So here I will share 3 tips to give you some ideas on how to set your boundaries. First, learn to say no. As I mentioned in the beginning of this episode, when you say yes to others, make sure you are not saying no to yourself. Imagine this scenario. Your friend asks you for help. You say yes to your friend, but in fact, you do not want to do that, and you were just feeling bad to say no. Then you feel resentment, bitterness toward your friend, and anger at yourself for the job you promised to do. So it's very important to learn to say no, and that is the first step of setting personal boundaries. Yet boundaries can be flexible. When boundaries are too rigid or inflexible, problems can occur. When we set healthy personal boundaries, we begin to improve our self-confidence and self-esteem. Second, you need to know your right and believe you have the right, because you do. You have the right to say no without feeling guilty. You have the right to be treated with respect. You have the right to put your needs your first priority. You have the right to walk away if you're feeling mistreated or manipulated. You have the right not to meet other people's unreasonable expectations, and more. I want you to try to make a list of all the rights that you have and keep all of them in your mind. Third, know your limits. You can't set good boundaries if you don't know where you stand. So take some time to work on yourself and identify what your emotional, physical, and spiritual limits to the following categories: with strangers, work colleagues, friends, family, and intimate partners. Make a boundary list per each category and ask yourself what you can tolerate and accept and what makes you feel uncomfortable or stressed. For example, you don't feel comfortable when work colleagues ask you about your family, your partner, your childhood, or your marriage. So when next time someone tries to do that, you might feel they're overstepping your boundaries, and sometimes it's an unintentional action. If you don't feel like to talk about it, you can politely refuse to give any details. For example, you can say, "I don't feel like to talk about it right now," or "Can we talk about that later?" In the beginning, you may fear the other person's response. You might feel if that's rude or feel bad for saying no to others. If you have that uncomfortable thought, remind yourself that boundaries are a sign of self-respect and self-love, and it helps us create a much healthier and long-term relationship with others. Remember that we teach people how to treat us, so give yourself the permission to set boundaries and work to preserve them. When you become more aware and gain more self-confidence as you set your personal boundaries, all your relationships will improve dramatically because you can now communicate better with others, and you also have better understanding on what you want and what you don't want. When you feel that way, you can have more fulfilling relationships and a happier life. You will also feel you have more stability and control over your life.